One of my favorite moments of Undertale happens in the waterfall section. We come across a small room. Inside is an inscription on the wall telling us of a haunting song that echoes the corridors, and a piano to play. We're not sure what to do with it, since we can't hear any song, so we leave. Across the corridor, though, we do find a statue, rain pouring onto it like a forgotten toy, and, in the next room, a basket of umbrellas. We don't need to, but we can go back to give the statue one of the umbrellas. A small act of kindness to something that can't ever recognize it. And then... it's just a simple melody, and yet it sounds so melancholic. Maybe it's the fact that it's playing on a music box and that forces a nostalgia onto it. Even so, there's this intangible sorrow that you can't exactly place. I played Undertale when it first came out, and back then we didn't get the display of the answer above the statue. I had to really internalize the melody, memorize each note, until eventually... puzzle solved. I moved on afterwards. The game was fun and filled to the brim with stuff that I still bust a gut laugh at to this day. The game is very high energy, but it does take moments to slow down and let the moment speak for itself. However, in the back of my mind, that one melody would still play. I wondered if it meant anything. And then... that song again. I really wish I could forget Undertale and just relive that. That moment when memory meets melody and makes something marvelous. This is called a leitmotif. When a melody or motif appears multiple times throughout a story or song, sometimes it has a particular meaning, sometimes it's for a particular effect. This here does have a reason, and a reason that becomes clear when the story progresses. There is one issue, though. Everyone and their mother has talked about leitmotifs. I mean, sure, everyone has the right to speak, and everyone always brings a new perspective in this discussion. It's an interesting discussion, a discussion 10 billion people have talked about 10 billion times, and it will, and should, be talked about more. And as much as I'd like to add my own 2 cents, I feel like there isn't really much I can add other than those 2 cents. But there is something I can add. Something that people don't talk about that often. And that is Toby's love and masterful usage of Chekhov's guns. I love Undertale and Deltarune. It has everything I enjoy. Simple yet complicated stories with complicated characters. It has my exact sense of humor, and my years in prison as a homestuck has modified my brain to release serotonin every time I hear Toby's music like Pavlov's dog. But anyway, you're probably wondering what I mean by, Chekhov's guns. Well, it's simple. A Chekhov's gun is a narrative tool that is brought to the attention by one character and or the narrator of a story. It is typically pointed out at the beginning to foreshadow its usage later on in the story. Understand? No? Okay, how about this? Imagine, if you can, you're watching your favorite old-timey movie, because we all have one, Anyway, Nancy walks into Rodney's study and notices that he has a Winchester rifle hanging on his wall. Nicole, who has never seen a gun before, cries out,
"Oh me, oh my, oh woe is me! Roderick, how can you have such a foul mechanism displayed in your scholarly chambers? Oh, I think I am going to faint."
While Nina is held aghast by the man-made horrors beyond her womanly comprehension, Rory says,
"Oh, there's no need to worry, Dollface. Fear not, Natalie. I am a gentleman of reason, but I do wish to keep myself prepared for any rapscallion who dares challenge me, be it burglars, killers, or crooked cops, because this movie was made before the Hays Code was implemented." "We are? In that case, Ron, I am a lesbian." "I am also a lesbian, Noah."
Where the fuck was I going with this bit? Whatever. The point is that there's a gun. Guns are used to shoot people, so that means, logically, by the end of the story, that gun is going to be used to shoot someone. Now, people tend to call that foreshadowing, but there is a difference. Foreshadowing is a subtle yet noticeable detail that makes you wonder and speculate about what it could mean in the future, whereas a Chekhov's gun...
"Oh hey, look at this creepy-ass locked-up bunker with the scary noise. I bet this won't be relevant in the future."
are a bit more in your face. It's something that the plot will directly call into attention before throwing it aside and then bring it back when you might have just forgotten about it. Which begs the question, how does Toby Fox do it? Extremely well. How well, you ask? Well, there is another favorite moment of mine in Undertale, and it's specifically related to this one puzzle at the beginning. Starts the randomizer and... Fun fact, when I first played this game, I actually wrote down the colors and their effects. It just seemed like something the game would do, bringing a very difficult puzzle at this moment, but when the results came pink, I was howling in my chair. Here I was, thinking it was gonna be important.
Boy, howdy do I!
That, my friends, is what I am talking about. There are other moments in Undertale that I consider Chekhov's guns, the butterscotch pie, the spider donut, all that jazz. But that's just Undertale. let's talk about Deltarune for a hot minute. And by hot minute, I mean the rest of the video. Because Deltarune is still in development, and we have 2/7 of the way to completion, it's about time to focus on what possible guns were placed and what trends may continue. Because I've noticed a couple of things. But we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. For now, let's talk about this absolutely golden moment of Deltarune. I mean, I have option to make a deadly machine, but I have option to make duck, so what choice do I have but make duck? After completing the Thrash machine, we eventually have to defeat our own creation. Or not. We fight Susie and Lancer, enter a draw, and continue on our adventures. And we never see that duck again.
You see, this is what I'm talking about. Just when you think you're safe from any sort of twist, that thing you made 2 years ago now slaps you in the face.
This isn't even the last time we see that duck. You're all probably wondering why I spent a good long time avoiding the topic I wish to discuss, but I'm doing this for a very good reason. The statue melody, the colored squares, the ducking Thrash machine, these are the 3 heroes of my theory, because what I want to talk about will sound completely deranged out of context, so I thought it was a good idea to give you all good examples of the things Toby has done, to understand that what I want to discuss may not be that far off. But I understand the apprehension. We only got a small portion of the full game. We can practically point to anything and call it possible foreshadowing and create an entire fanfiction off of something that may or may not be relevant to the main story. Sometimes, we know when something is relevant. That's what Chekhov's guns are. Guns placed in their designated spot to be shot for whom the bell tolls. And we have a pretty decent number of guns placed around. We have the very obvious future Dark World, Rudolph Holiday's illness, the majority of Rouxls fans, and the spams folder telling us of Antenna and Mike Rophone. But I want to talk about some lesser-known points of interest, because there are some things that have caught my eye, such as your brother's library debt. I'm not joking. At the end of Chapter 1, you learn that Azrael has a library book that has been overdue for,
5 years! Jesus Christ, man!
In doing so, racked up a huge debt, which seems like a joke at the expense of your brother. But in Chapter 2, the first thing you can do is open up his drawer and steal $5. And at the end of Chapter 2, and this isn't even something I learned until I watched Two Left Thumb's Gasterex video, you can talk to Undyne, and she wants you to give Alphys some chocolates for, accidentally running over her bike. You can give Alphys the chocolates, but you can also give them to Sans to return them, and you'll get $5. In one chapter, you gain $10, and there really isn't much you can spend on maybe the diner, but there is no mention of a direct price. If anything, you get stuff free. The library debt, however, has a very specific price, so logically, that seems to be the reason you are getting the money. And I mean, it could just be a minor thing. Pay off your brother's debt as a nice gesture, but then you'll have to do it again in the future. 'Cause we all know he's not returning that book. Hi there, Editor Dante here. So, something very funny just happened. Literally the day I finished recording audio for this video, famous Delta tuber Half-Bred Chaos uploaded a video on December holiday and everything we know about her. Why is this important? Because in the video, they spent a good portion of it on how to draw dragons, and how not only Asriel, but also Toriel are really against returning that book, implying that there's more than just funny dragon book, but that there's a sentimental value to it. For example, what if the book was also tied to death in some aspect, and this is why they are refusing to return it. And there are choices that can make returning it possible. Go check out their video on this if you're curious, but I'm just telling you all this because I feel very, very vindicated for noticing this small detail about the painting. Oh, and also to tell you all that it's 7 years, not 5. If you commented on that error, thank you for boosting the algorithm. If you want to boost it more, please like and subscribe. Or don't. I'm not your boss. Anyway, back to video, Dante. That said, there's just something that feels, well, scummy about all of this. Chris obviously doesn't want to steal from Asriel, and returning the chocolates to Sans for money when it was supposed to be a gift for Alsphys just doesn't sit well either. Going out of your way to get money to pay for one debt seems like it's building up to something more than just haha funny brother-like book. What's it building up to? I don't know. A secret boss? A secret interaction? Does returning the book, paying off your brother's death, somehow reveal Gaster himself by dropkicking us through the computer? I genuinely do not know. But it is a gun, and a gun that is loaded. Speaking of things that are loaded,
My hatred for this pre-fried calamari.
in Chapter 1, and only Chapter 1, if you go here and wait around, you get to talk with him and learn some interesting things. This interaction can only happen if you talk to Chapter 1 and come back here in Chapter 2, the implication being that every chapter we learn something more. But what do we learn? A song in the ocean. On surface level, this doesn't seem like much, but there are some interesting correlations with the ocean. When you enter a dark world, the sound that plays is ocean.ogg. And even before that, when you start the game for the very first time, the background displayed is called Image Depths. And looking at it really does look like you're looking up at the surface from under the depths of the ocean. There's also the fact that it's a song in a video game. And a video game made by Toby Fox, the Toby Fox that heavily uses music to foreshadow key events. What any of this means is unknown. For now, at the very least. It is definitely something to keep an eye on. Alright, let's talk about the secret boss. There are many theories as to what the secret boss of Chapter 3 might be. Some say it's the Scarlet Flowers, some say it's the Book of Hymns. I've heard mentions of a remote, but there are people who suggest that something that hasn't been mentioned yet, or something in Toriel's room. But after everything we've talked about, I just don't think it's possible. There is no way on God's green earth Toby could pass off the opportunity of mentioning the secret boss beforehand. If something in the house is given even a sentence, it's up for consideration. But not everything. So, what do I think? I think it's actually the knockoff controller under the bed. It fits with the theme of TVs and also literally has control in its name. While a remote does fit, the thing about secret bosses is that they are items that can easily be discarded. A Joker card can be left in its boxy prison, a spam email can be directed to the dump folder, a remote for a TV, it can get lost, sure, but it's something that is too directly linked to the TV to just be thrown away. A knockoff controller, on the other hand, That's something you could just toss under the bed and forget about. Not to mention, one of the newsletters mentions the nightmare of an unfinished game, and as well as the fact that Asriel has a video game in the mix in his computer. A work-in-progress game, even. I can definitely see something along the lines of a video game controller trying to connect with a game to play as a scene. Because from the brief glimpses that we got, changing scenes seems to be the theme with the scene machine, but that's just my secret boss headcanon. But while I'm talking about this, I think it's a good time to mention the Shadow Crystals, more particularly the Shadow Crystal's lesser-known cousin, the Glowshards. I am half convinced that everyone has pretty much forgotten about it, which is very funny when you think about it. In a game that has heavy emphasis on light and dark as its core motif, and having two items called Glowshard and Shadow Crystal, you'd think there'd be more theories on both of them. But no, people just focus on the Shadow Crystals, which makes sense, cause you need to go out of your way to get the Shadow Crystals, finding little knickknacks or completing a side quest to which you have to then fight a secret boss to get them. The Glowshards, however, are just something you can find, but you can also easily miss them. They don't even do much. The one unique thing about them is that you can sell them off and their price increases for each chapter. They have another use when you're fighting a Rudin Ranger. They instantly become spareable and the crystal disappears. If that was their only use, I would be satisfied, using an object to pass by a Chapter 1 enemy. So then why can you find one in Chapter 2? We have no reason to have this, and yet we do. It's kind of funny when you think about it. It's like Toby found a way to create the most forgettable item in the video's game. They are just as discoverable as they are missable. They have a quote-unquote use that you can do, and it's like they are purposely designed to be ignored, and maybe it is nothing. Maybe it's just a coincidence that it's called Glowshard and it's next to the Shadow Crystals. It would be a very funny coincidence, but for now, I will keep it in the armory. Anyway, thank you for hearing me ramble. Let's just see what the core of this video is about. It's easy to point out the big things and call it big, but you really need to squint to focus on the things that others miss. I want to talk about the lesser-known things that I feel have importance. For example, SUSIE knows healing magic. 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 There's an entire section of the game where SUSIE gets hurt, and Rouxls heals her, and then both of them fuck off to, I don't know, play Minecraft or something. We return to them, and she now knows a magical spell that heals a heaping 2 HP and costs a cheap and easy 100% TP. This is very much a funny haha moment for the Lulz and the Lamaus, but I don't think we are thinking of the implication of this. Don't forget the duck. Don't forget the colored tiles. Why the hell, on a story level, did SUSIE learn healing magic? It's only mentioned once afterwards, when she tries to heal Lancer, but I think it's gonna come back. It will come back. And I fear when it comes back. The only two other characters that know healing magic are Rouxls and Noelle, and their healing spell is tied to Heavenly Light. So, what if we can't get that light anymore? SUSIE's healing isn't tied to heaven. Will she be the only thing that can heal us? This is, and I do not exaggerate, a very stressful thing for me to think about. There is one last thing that I think is worth mentioning. This video is getting long, so I'll try to make this brief, but if you want to hear someone talk about it more, I recommend watching Molly Stars' Device Theory videos for this, and that's Dragon Blazers. In short, Dragon Blazers is a video game in the video game Deltarune. Mainly about how some parts of the game that gets mentioned can have a correlation to the things in Deltarune. For example, Noelle mentions how sparing the enemies is similar to how it is done in Dragon Blazers, and in Snowgrave, her approach of the game changes along with, well, everything that has happened. That is definitely something to keep our eyes on. So I suppose we should be on the lookout for a maze in the Ice Palace, a party member having bad stats, or a mage leaving the party. Yeah, just something to be aware of. Speaking of which, Rouxls is pretty much a safe bet for a mage. I wonder what the classes of the others would be. Susie's obviously a barbarian, being fighting focused and the whole rude mechanic. Noelle could be a cleric, with the religious connections as well as healing. Birdley I can see as a paladin, being a fighting focus but also have its own religion, that being intelligence. If Caddy and Jockington join the parties, I could see them as a warlock and monk respectively. That leaves Chris. Well, Chris is pretty well-rounded fighter and definitely has some armor, so I could just see them as a knight. I think Chris would be a knight. Hey, wait a minute. And if you're wondering, yes, I am a Christus the Night Truther. Sue me.